that the live stream has been started, please. Thank you. Can I welcome everybody to this meeting of Council here today on the 9th of February. There is no testing for fire alarms, so therefore if the fire alarm does go off, please go via the designated exits that you know of. May I remind you about the buttons with which you're to speak. When I have indicated that you can speak, you press on the right hand and on it comes, and then you may speak. You know, of course, of the timings. There are some amendments to timings which I will announce. I also have to tell you, as I said to you before, I also have a button here that takes total control over all the others, so I can switch you off at any time. So, you know, the power is tremendous. The mobile phones, I hope you've switched those off. Reminder that this process is being filmed and photographed. If anybody does have a reason why they don't want to be photographed, please let us know. I know that members are happy with that. Very well. And we are aware of that, I understand. Thank you. Very well. Very well, we'll now begin the formal meeting. So, agenda item 1 is apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Claire Davis, Councillor Harvey and Councillor Tobin. Are there any others? I don't think there are. Very well. Declarations of interests. I declare a Schedule 2 declaration of interest under the last item on the agenda, agenda item 11, and that's because of my membership of the National Joint Councils on various pay negotiating bodies, including local government chief officers and chief executives. Are there any other declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah, declaration of interest in respect of the Southern Relief Road and my residency being at one end. Thank you.
Very well. No other declarations of interest. Thank you. We move on then to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting. These were meetings of the council meeting on the 8th of December. There are no matters of accuracy that have been notified to the monitoring officer. Members, are you in agreement that the minutes of these extraordinary meeting on the 8th of December are agreed? Agreed? Everyone? No one against. Thank you. The next item is agenda item 4, which is the Chairman and Chief Executive's announcements for noting. First of all, you will see my report. Again, I thank those of you, those members of the Council who were able to attend the reception before Christmas and your partners when we presented Lady Darnley with the freedom of the county. And also over the page, of course, I will modestly take full credit for any extra money that we have received, every single penny of it, I'm sure. Thank you. Chief Executive, is there anything you wish to add to your report?
Just one, please, Chairman. Earlier this week, we're advised that the Ofsted will be visiting us again on the 20th and 21st of February to undertake their 3rd visit with us. The focus of the visit will be on young people aged 16 plus in care and care leavers. We're still working out the detailed programme with them at this stage, but likely to cover areas around the quality and suitability of accommodation, employment, education and training, staying close and in touch, and responding to specific needs of care leavers. Once we've got more detail, we would be able to share that with you, and also to confirm the arrangements for follow-up briefings, as we would normally do, to share the outcome of the visit with all members, and keep you up to date with progress and the findings from that visit of Ofsted. So that's the update. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And if there are any particular issues, please do not hesitate to contact the Chief Executive after the meeting. We move on then to agenda item 5, which is questions from members of the public. There have been 7 questions submitted under this matter, and they were published as a supplementary on the 7th of February under the new rules and regulations that we are running. The supplementary question can be asked further in advance or as of today. I will ask if Ms Banks is present, and if she wants to. Ms Banks has requested not to be filmed. She asked questions on council assets. Ms Banks, would you like to ask your supplementary question, please?
Thank you for your reassuring response regarding the government's push for the disposal of assets. While this budget may not propose asset sales, the Section 151 officer's statement discusses utilising reserves as temporary relief. As a service provider tasked to manage publicly owned assets of the county at public expense, and therefore the custodians and not the owners of those public assets, by what lawful right could Herefordshire Council claim to be able to sell off what it doesn't actually own, but is public property merely entrusted to the council to manage?
Thank you. Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Stollard.
Thank you, Ms Banks. What I can say is that, and reiterate the response we've already given you, there is no intention or plans stated or implied that we will look to dispose of any of our assets, either now or in the medium-term future out to 2029.
Thank you. The next question is from Mr Banks, and I understand that he is not in attendance today, but he has submitted a supplementary, and I'll ask the monitoring officer to read that out.
I understand the proposed council-wide savings aim to deliver a lean and resilient workforce. However, the response is still unclear on whether senior and executive pay is in scope for those transformation initiatives. If frontline staff face uncertainty while leadership layer costs are protected and opaque, how does that align with shared sacrifices in challenging financial times? Specifically, will executive salaries and discretionary spending like travel come under review alongside direct public services facing cuts? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stollard again.
Thank you, Mr Banks, for your supplementary question. I can confirm all discretionary spend is in scope for the transformation initiatives that we outlined in our previous response, and some of our plans to reduce the size and shape of our workforce are specifically targeted towards management costs. It's important to note that our executive salaries are neither protected nor are they opaque, and annual pay increases are determined nationally and are outside of the control of the council. Salaries for our senior team are transparent both in the pay policies we adopt and in the amounts that are paid. Our pay policies are reported annually in our pay policy statement, and the amounts received by individuals are reported in our statements of accounts. Both documents are publicly available. The Council is clear that the solutions to our financial challenges require a whole Council response at all levels throughout the organisation.
Thank you. The next question is from Ms Russell with regarding community facilities. We haven't had any indication of a supplementary, and I don't think they're present today. That's right. So I'll move on then to Mr McGowan. Mr McGowan would like to come forward. Mr McGowan asked a question on the city master plan, which is in the papers before you. Mr McGowan, would you like to ask your supplementary, please?
Right. Is the volume correct and working correctly? Yep. Right. I am most pleased that the draft city master plan is soon to be submitted for public consultation. From the council constitution, Citizens' Rights 5867 consultations, 5868 states the council encourages as many people as possible to give their views on decisions which affect them. But I note from summary results of the 2024-25 budget consultation events carried out for the council by Impact Consultancy and Research, that'll be on pages 305 to 338 that you'll be getting to later, that the pop-up consultation stands, etc., only managed to engage 652 people. But Herefordshire contains around 200,000 good folk. So this sort of consultation is not going to be of any use in fulfilling as many people as possible to give their views.
Thank you. Is that your question?
Now, when I was helping with... Are we still running?
Yeah, you're still running. What's your question?
Right. Now, when I was helping with Dilwyn's parish plan consultation, it was impressed upon me that this gold standard was to deliver printed copy with reply questionnaire to every household.
What's your question?
Will sufficient funds be included in the budget to allow this gold standard of democratic consultation to be applied to draft city master plan? Will a copy be delivered to all Herefordshire households?
Thank you. Councillor Price.
When the question has arrived, will a consultation go to every household in Herefordshire for the Hereford City Master Plan? The answer is no. End of. Consultation has been followed through all sorts of processes for many years, and we do consult, and if you are in knowledge of a consultation, it is your responsibility to make comment to anything that's there. But we do not have the funding to go to every household on every consultation. So I'm afraid the direct answer is no.
Well, thank you for that. Mr. Pugh, is Mr. Pugh present? Mr. Pugh, if you'd like to come forward to ask your supplementary question, I remind you have a minute and it is in form of a question. Mr. Pugh's original question was on second homes council tax. Mr.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes, David Pugh, Leinster. Thank you for your response to my question. Whilst according to council it's not in breach of the ethics of section 149 of the Equalities Act 2010, it is operating nevertheless within a discriminatory framework. While councils may have case to levy for council tax upon second homes and empty properties, it needs acknowledge being a service corporation. In this case, it would be collecting fees for either little or zero benefit for the owners of second or empty premises or properties. This council overreach penalises property owners by suggesting it is acceptable to apply a 200 or 300% increase for absolutely no services. If councils adopt proposals opposing general principles, already case law, what public funds will be needed defending the legal and lawful challenges inevitably to be adopted by outraged private property owners taking issue over being labelled as cash cows for the council? For the record, I'm neither a second home or empty property owner.
Thank you. Councillor Stollard, can you reply, please?
Thank you, Mr. Pugh, for your supplementary. What I would do is I would refer you again back to my answer that we are not practicing discrimination against a protected characteristic. It's a separate group and they're not protected by the Equality Act. However, what I would say is that what we wish to do is we wish to bring properties back into use which benefit the community and the economy across the county. We're not targeted. It's your choice if you wish to leave it empty.
Thank you. Mrs. Pugh, would you like to come forward to ask your supplementary, please? Mrs. Pugh's original question was on road repair budget, and if you'd like to ask your supplementary question, please. Mrs. Pugh.
Thank you for your response to my earlier question regarding the adequacy of funding to rectify the highways, byways and footpaths of Herefordshire. However, I find your response has failed to fully answer my question. Presumably the council have full knowledge of the maintenance and repairs required in the county and no doubt have calculated the costs involved in expediting the necessary works required to be done. So, if the council know what funds are available and the cost of the works required, can the council confirm that there are sufficient funds in this year's budget to restore Herefordshire roads and footpaths to a good and safe condition? And if not, what percentage of the outstanding works can we expect to see expedited? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cabinet Member for the Environment, that's, where is he? Councillor Durkin, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pugh, for your supplementary. It's, the question you've posed is quite a complex one. Where there are defects in pavement or highways, it would be good if the public and locality stewards could report them to us so that we can attend to the dangerous ones, the more dangerous ones. But if I may, as you've asked such a technical specific question, I will send you a written response. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I understand Mr. McGowan is going to... you're aware of this, Mr. Gowan, good. Mr. Everett's question on net zero, he has allowed Mr. McGowan to follow up with his supplementary question, which he has supplied to us. So if you'd like to read that out, please. Thank you.
Current atmospheric CO2 is 425.89 parts per million. The Council's net zero policy, if fully achieved, will cause a reduction to 425.73 parts per million. The Council received £4,431,000 in external grant funding to help achieve this spectacular reduction. From whom was this grant received, and are there any conditions the Council has to fulfil to receive it?
Thank you. Councillor Swindlehurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Everett, for the question, and Mr. McGowan for reading it out. Herefordshire Council does not measure performance towards net zero targets in terms of atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2, but in terms of carbon emissions measured in tonnes of CO2 per annum. And if you want more information, it's on the website. It's quite a complex area. The grant monies were received from numerous funding sources, and I will list them. So they include the following: Getting Building Fund, which was administered by the Marches Local Enterprise Partnership; the Levelling Up Fund, administered by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities and the Department of Transport; the Local Transport Plan, administered by the Department for Transport; Natural Flood Management Programme, administered by the Environment Agency and the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs; Sustainable Development Fund, administered by the Welsh Government; National Peatland Action Programme, administered by Natural Resources Wales; European Regional Development Fund, administered by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and the European Commission; Warm Homes Fund, administered by National Grid and Affordable Warmth Solution; the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery, which is administered by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero and Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy; the Home Upgrade Grant, administered by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero; Stronger Towns Fund, administered by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government; Basic Need Allocations, administered by the Department for Education. These grant allocations are each subject to their own funding agreements, which are satisfied to enable the Council to defray the grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swindlehurst, a very comprehensive reply. And thank you to all members of the public for those questions. We will now move on to agenda item 6, which is questions from members of Council. And we begin with Councillor Fagan, and her subject was the public rights of way. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you for your reply to my question, and I'm delighted that local contractors will be involved in the work to carry out the capital repairs to bridges and footpaths. Could you confirm that Balfour Beatty will not be relied upon to deliver these works? Also, at the local access forum meeting recently, it was reported there were 72 outstanding capital projects. In this current financial year, £200,000 was allocated by the previous independent Green administration towards footpaths. Is it possible, please, to have a project-specific breakdown in writing of how this funding was spent and what the barriers were to funding having an impact on the Prow network in this instance? Thank you.
Thank you. That's Councillor Price.
Yeah, well, fortunately, thank you for the question, Councillor. And yes, I understand where you're coming from on this. And you did give me a very nice opening to say you wanted a written answer, so I will give you a full written answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Engel, you are next. You asked a question on the Lengthsman scheme.
Chair, Councillor Engels has been detained, not in...
Councillor Chin, are you going to? Do you have a supplementary on his behalf?
No, he hopes to join the meeting by about 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay. Well, he'll probably have to pick that up with the individual cabinet member. And now we'll move on to Councillor Hitchener and your question regarding children's services savings.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the cabinet member for providing us with a preview of the 2023-24 savings of £300,000 for residential placement costs, which are likely to be forecast in his administration's Q3 performance report. These savings represent a disappointingly small amount, £300,000 out of a planned £4.5 million, and an amount that can so easily, as we know, be reversed by changes in demand. Please can he clarify whether the £200,000 of savings he refers to in staff costs are being utilised to offset in-year pressures elsewhere in the Directorate?
Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Councillor Hitchener, for your follow-up question. In terms of the detail of that, I would need to consider it carefully and provide you with a written response.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Oliver, your question was on bus services improvements. Did you have a supplementary?
No, Chair. I'd just like to thank the member for the report that the bus service improvement grant is being considered and the spending will be announced over the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Harvey's given her apologies. Has she asked anybody to give a supplementary? No problems if that's not the case. Okay, very well. That will complete questions from members of council. And we now go on to the substantive items on this agenda. I just want to let you know that, of course, these next four items, 7, 8, 9 and 10, the voting on this will be by a recorded vote. And I wanted to alert you all that on 7 and 8, I will be doing it in reverse order. So instead of starting with Councillor Andrews, who is, as you know, has that burden of being the first, Councillor Woodall, in fact, will now be the first for the debate for any recorded votes on items 7 and 8, and then we'll return to alphabetical order for the last two. So I just wanted to keep you on your toes during this debate. Item 7 is the council tax premiums on second homes and empty properties. It is outlined in pages 49 to 56. I'll invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services to introduce and move the report. Councillor Stollard.
Thank you, Chair. As the billing authority, Herefordshire Council is required to set the overall council tax for the following financial year. Council approved the net tax base on which the annual precept is in part based at its annual budget meeting. The remaining precept elements are then set by other authorities and the Council acts as a collecting agent for those precepted sums. The application of council tax premiums in respect of second homes and empty dwellings was considered by Council on the 10th of February 2023 as part of the 2023-24 budget setting process. It was resolved that additional premiums be applied, 100% premium for second homes and 100% premium for properties which have been empty and unfurnished for a period of between 1 and 2 years, subject to the legislation being approved. I would emphasise that these proposed changes were carried by full council unanimously. The Government's Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023 received royal assent in October 2023 and included discretionary options for the application of council tax premiums on empty properties and second homes. The changes that are outlined in the Act are as follows. Firstly, to bring forward a period from 2 years to 1 year where an unoccupied and substantially furnished dwelling, that is an empty dwelling, can be charged a premium of 100%. A premium of 200% where the dwelling has remained empty for a period of 5 years or more, and a premium of 300% where the dwelling has remained empty for a period of 10 years or more. And secondly, to enable the charging of 100% premium for any dwellings which are not a sole residence and substantially furnished. Whilst council tax legislation is largely mandatory for billing authorities, permitted discounts, disregards and exemptions are determined by statute with no discretion allowed. There are an increasing number of areas where a billing authority may determine the type and level of charge to be levied, and the main discretionary areas are as follows. Second homes, substantially furnished premises which are not sole or main residence, unoccupied and substantially unfurnished premises, unoccupied and substantially unfurnished premises which require or are undergoing structural repair, and premiums in respect of premises which have been unoccupied and substantially unfurnished for a period of 2 years. Each billing authority is able to determine the level of discount, if any, to be granted and the amount by percentage of premium by 31st March in advance of the financial year in which the changes are to be implemented. Where a change to policy is proposed, a decision is required by full council under sections 11A, 11B and 11C of the Local Government Finance Act of 1992. The proposed changes to empty dwellings will take place with effect from 1 April 2024, and the proposal in respect of second homes will take effect from 1 April 2025, and this is to comply with the requirements of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023 to provide a notice period of 12 months to all second home owners. In accordance with legislation and subject to full council approval, the details of the resolution will be published in at least one newspaper and within 21 days of the decision. There are, however, a number of exemptions from empty dwelling and second home premiums. These are properties undergoing probate, properties that are being actively marketed for sale or rent, empty properties undergoing major repairs, annexes forming part of or being treated as part of the main dwelling, job-related dwellings, occupied caravan pitches and houseboat moorings, and seasonal homes where year-round or permanent occupation is prohibited or has been specified for use as holiday accommodation or prevents occupancy as a person's sole or main residence. In summary, subject to full council approval, the proposed levels of premium are as follows. From 1 April 2024, empty dwelling premiums which are unoccupied and substantially unfurnished after 1 year up to 5 years of becoming empty, 100% premium. Between 5 and 10 years, 200% premium. Dwellings empty for 10 years or more are 300% premium. And from 1 April 2025, second homes premium dwellings which are furnished but not a sole main residence are 100% premium. I'm therefore very pleased to endorse this report and its 3 recommendations and strongly propose that it is approved today by Council.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. The Leader of the Council is going to second the report. You're going to second it now? Or do you want to do it later?
Well, I'll second it, but I'll speak later.
Okay, very much. You'll speak later. Now, I've got Councillor Kenyon who wanted to speak. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? Councillor Chowns, Councillor Hitchener. I'm looking back here. Councillor Proctor. Councillor James. So I'll do it as in my usual batch of 3s. So Councillor Kenyon, Councillor Chowns and Councillor Hitchener, first 3.
Thank you, Chairman. You sounded a little desperate there if I was the only one that's going to speak. Widely, I think this is a great idea and it should be implemented. I've just got a couple of questions. When residents go into care homes, what happens there? 'Cause there's a time where they may go into care and they keep the house running and that sort of stuff. Is there any relief on that side of things? And where it said about probate, that's good, but probate can take more than 12 months. You've limited it at 12 months. Probate can go on a lot longer than that. So if there's any discretion around that, I think that could possibly be looked at. Those are my 2 questions. I mean, if I've read into it wrongly, please tell me. So that's my question.
Councillor Chowns.
Thank you. I fully support this proposal. It's a scandal that in the UK we have more than 1 million homes with no residents, while we have 250,000 people who need a home. And I've looked at the work of the charity Action on Empty Homes, which has worked on this for a long time. Last year, the number of empty homes in the UK rose by 5%. Actually, in Herefordshire, last year, the number of long-term empty homes rose by 16%. So we have more than 1,000 long-term empty homes and more than 700 second homes. That means that more than 1 in 50 homes in Herefordshire is currently out of use and could be used to accommodate people who desperately need a home. So that's from the government's own figures. So I think measures like this are very important in enabling us to provide incentives to bring those buildings back into use so that families can have the permanent safe home they need. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah, likewise, I support this proposal. Last year, in the run-up to the elections, the Conservatives made much of the fact that the Indie Green Coalition highlighted that without management action, there was a £16 million funding gap by the 4th year of the MTFS. We took the management action to close this gap by setting the wheels in motion to enable
Hang on a minute, I've got a point of order here. Councillor Kenyon.
Yeah, that's the second time in this meeting I've heard the term Indie Green Coalition. I wasn't part of any coalition. I'm staunchly independent. And please, if you're going to use independent green, use the proper titles, Independence for Herefordshire and Green. Okay. That's my point of order, Chairman.
Thank you. I think everyone's got that. People just bear that in mind. Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you. If I may continue then. So we took the management action to close this gap by setting the wheels in motion to enable the council to make this double charge of council tax on second homes left vacant by their owners. Members will see from the detail in this year's MTFS that the income which is this additional charge will bring is forecast to deliver 19.7 million over the first 3 years of its operation. This more than covers the electoral scaremongering gap. Under this scheme, second owners have the option to avoid this tax by turning their second homes into income-generating assets, by opening them up for holiday lets or renting them out for longer to provide much-needed homes for local people. What is a travesty is that it is the policies of this Conservative government which are creating the gap in funding in the first place. Had this opportunity to increase local tax not been made available, how is this gap to be closed? With no plan B from the current administration, one can only assume it would have meant further cuts in services. We support this proposal, which updates the proposals agreed last year and put in place by the previous administration.
Thank you. Councillor Stoller, did you want to just address those two questions that Councillor Kenyon had asked before I go to the next speakers, whilst it's still fresh in your minds?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in regards to Councillor Kenyon's question, we're waiting for the regulations to be confirmed by the Secretary of State, and we will make use of discretionary powers to provide exemptions as appropriate.
Thank you. Now I've got Councillor Proctor and Councillor James. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this? Yes. Councillor Heathfield and Councillor Highfield. Sorry. Councillor Matthews. Anyone else? And then well, I'll call those four speakers and then we'll go for the vote. Councillor Proctor.
We simply do not have enough houses in Herefordshire for the people who live in Herefordshire. And in my ward, which is the most densely packed ward in the county, you experience that firsthand. The number of properties where adult children are living with their parents, sometimes with their children because they cannot afford to live in houses of their own. The number of people who are putting up with things from their landlord because they're too scared about the possibility of being able to access suitable accommodation if they leave. This is not going to transform that, but I hope that this will be part of a package of measures that will help to address the housing crisis in this county, and for that reason I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Just merely say that you support it. I sometimes find it slightly nauseating, this self-righteousness. This was passed by the council unanimously. Now, you wouldn't have thought that if you heard some of the comments that have just been made. You know, this has been passed by the council and would have been passed by the council, whatever administration was in, and is being passed the length and breadth of the country by administrations of all colours. So stop that nonsense, please.
Councillor Highfield.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I support the amendment, but I'd like to ask, there are people whose homes were flooded, they are unable to live in them, and they have been unable to live in them in some cases for 1 or 2 years, and they're still paying full council tax on them. I wondered if there's any possibility of relief for people in that situation.
Very well, and we'll get back to that with Councillor Stoller at the moment. Councillor Matthews, and then I'll call in Councillor Lester to second, and then Councillor Stoller, and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support the recommendations. And as I was going to say, Councillor James has mentioned it, this policy has been accepted nationwide. I think most councils have adopted it quite rightly, so it has our full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lester, to second.
Well, I echo the comments of Councillor Matthews, and I acknowledge that there is a housing shortage, and this will go some way to address that. But as all authorities are needing to fund themselves for the long term, it makes perfect financial sense to introduce this as well. I'd like to thank all of those councillors who voted for it last time round. Yes, the last administration did put it forward, but yes, all councillors voted for it last time round, and I'm happy to second, and I hope that all councillors will be voting for it this time round. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stoller, is there anything you wanted to say to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just like to refer to Councillor Halford's point that we're launching the latest flood grant scheme on Monday, and that will include any details of council tax relief.
Thank you. Members, we've spoken on this. This will now be a recorded vote. The recommendations are on page 49, subsections 1, 2 and 3, so that you're all very clear that that's what we're voting for. I will call upon the monitoring officer to conduct the recorded vote, and as I have given notice, we will do this in reverse order, beginning with Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chairman. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Woodall.
For.
Councillor Robert Williams.
For.
Councillor Alan Williams.
For.
Councillor Tillett.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
For.
Councillor Stone. For. Councillor Stoddart.
For.
Councillor Stark.
For.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Simmons.
For.
Councillor Proctor.
For.
Councillor Price. Councillor Ivan Powell.
For.
Councillor Dan Powell.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pebbody.
For.
Councillor Owens.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor O'Driscoll.
For.
Councillor Matthews.
For.
Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Lester.
For.
Councillor Kenyon.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Hercombe.
For.
Councillor Hitchner.
For.
Councillor Highfield.
For.
Councillor Heathfield.
For.
Councillor Hamblin.
For.
Councillor Jennard.
For.
Councillor Gandy.
For.
Councillor Foxton.
For.
Councillor Fagan.
For.
Councillor Engel. Not here yet. Councillor Dykes.
For.
Councillor Durkin.
For.
Councillor Dave Davis.
For.
Councillor Crockett. Councillor Cornthwaite.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Chowns. Councillor Carwadine's not here yet. No. Councillor Bramer. Councillor Bolter. Councillor Biggs. Councillor Bartram. Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Baker. And Councillor Andrews. That's completely unanimous.
Yes, so that's completely unanimous. I don't think you need any agreement to that. Thank you all very much for that. We'll now move on to agenda item 8, which is to approve the 2024-25 local council tax reduction scheme. These are on pages 57 to 196. I'll invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services to introduce the report. Councillor Stollard, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, council tax charges can be reduced if the bill payer meets certain set criteria contained in the Council Tax Reduction or CTR scheme, which is available to working age and pensioner claimants. The pensioner CTR scheme is set nationally. However, the working age CTR is set locally by Herefordshire Council. Currently, more than 11,000 bill payers in Herefordshire are currently in receipt of the CTR, with over 6,000 claims from working age claimants. The existing local working age CTR scheme was approved by Council in February 2023 and is included within the document at Appendix 1, with the maximum discount maintained in 2023-24 to mirror those available to pensioner cases. This means that a 100% discount is awarded under CTR unless their income breaches the threshold, irrespective of the council tax band that the property falls into. This Conservative-led administration listens to members of the public, and during the recent public consultation events in respect of the revenue budget, it was made very clear by members of the public that continuing support for those that struggle to pay their council tax had their overwhelming support. Subsequently, and following the example of the previous administration, and as I confirmed at the Scrutiny Management Board on the 16th of January, we've brought forward this report to continue to provide this support to those individuals who require it. I'm therefore very pleased to endorse the report and propose that it is approved today by Council.
Thank you. Thank you. Leader of the Council, you're going to second, and do you want to speak now or later? Later. Okay. So the motion is now open to the floor. Are there anyone who wants to speak? Councillor Crockett, Councillor Chowns, and Councillor Matthews in the first instance, in that order. Councillor Chockett. It.
I do like chocolate, and that's probably why you thought
I
of
was
that.
I was looking at you, and you know
Sorry.
it just came to me.
Thank you, Chair. I completely support this agenda item as recommended. I, as one of the independents for Herefordshire, welcome that the maximum discount for working age households under this scheme has been maintained by 100% by the administration. Whilst their hands remain firmly on the tiller, it is worth noting that the economic realities of the government's austerity ideology means that they are forced to increase council tax to the maximum to get anywhere close to making ends meet. Whilst faced with the same economic imperatives, the Independents for Herefordshire /Green coalition made sure that the hardest hit households across Herefordshire, working as well as retired, were able to pay zero council tax. Given the many pressures these households face, this is a significant assistance. None of us as elected representatives of our communities want to maximise council tax increases, especially year after year. But schemes such as this allow the council to target the financial support to those households that need it most. And again, I will reiterate, I completely support it.
Thank you. Councillor Chance.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really pleased that this is being continued. As has been kindly acknowledged by the Cabinet member, this was introduced by the previous administration, continued for 3 years, and I'm really glad that you've agreed to continue it now. You know, this council tax reduction scheme means that the least well-off members of our community are protected entirely from paying council tax, and with the addition of the hardship fund, which again we started a few years ago and you've committed to continue, that means that there's additional support available for people who just come above the threshold for council tax kicking in. So I think together these measures mean that we're working together to ensure that those who struggle most financially, and many families do really struggle at the moment in the continued cost of living crisis, that they're protected from increases in council tax. So I'm really pleased that this is continuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I fully support, and my colleagues fully support the recommendations. I would like to query, though, where it says that maintaining the maximum discount 24 times will have a positive impact on the community by minimising the debt burden on residents who struggle to pay their council tax charge. That's fine. Can somebody tell us, because there's always those that just miss out the wrong side of the line, what information do you require to ascertain that their claim is justified and the case is made?
Thank you. Are there anybody else that wants to speak on this motion? I've got Councillor James. I'll have Councillor James, Councillor Lester, and then I'll refer back to Councillor Stollard, and then we'll have the vote. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to join in the virtue signalling in the council. This is like the previous item. This is something that's been adopted throughout the whole of the country in most local authorities, and is eminently sensible, and I hope will be unanimously supported by the whole of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lester, will you second, please?
I don't think I need to add anything more other than I'm very pleased to second the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Stollard, is there anything you wanted to say to sum up this debate?
No, Chair, I think it's all said, and I think it's got the goodwill of the council.
Very well. Very well. We'll now move to the recorded vote, and again we will do this beginning in reverse alphabetical order with Councillor Woodall.
Again, if everybody could indicate whether they are for, against or abstaining. Councillor Woodall. Councillor Robert Williams. Councillor Alan Williams. Councillor Tillett. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Swinglehurst. Councillor Stone. Councillor Stoddart.
4.
Councillor Stark. Councillor Spencer. Councillor Simmons.
4.
Councillor Proctor. Councillor Price. Councillor Ivan Powell. Councillor Dan Powell. Councillor Phillips.
4.
Councillor Pebbody. Councillor Owens. Councillor Oliver. Councillor O'Driscoll. Councillor Matthews. Councillor Mason. Councillor Lester. Councillor Kenyon. Councillor James. Councillor Hercombe. Councillor Hitchener.
4.
Councillor Highfield. Councillor Heathfield.
4.
Councillor Hamblin. Councillor Jennard. Councillor Gandy. Councillor Foxton.
4.
Councillor Fagan. Councillor Engel hasn't come. Councillor Dykes. Councillor Durkin. Councillor Dave Davis. Councillor Crockett. Councillor Cornthwaite.
4.
Councillor Cole.
4.
Councillor Chowns. Councillor Carverdine's not here. Councillor Bramer. Councillor Bolter. Councillor Biggs. Councillor Bartram. Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Baker. Councillor Andrews. Unanimous.
Thank you. That again is unanimous. Thank you all, colleagues, for that agenda item. We'll now move on to agenda item 9. This is the 2024-25 Capital Investment Budget and Capital Strategy Update, pages 127 to 144, and was also subject, as is the next item, to any amendments being placed before the 151 officer. On this item, I'm aware of no such amendments that have been proposed. I invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services to introduce and move the motion. Councillor Stollard, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring to Council today the final version of the 24-25 Capital Investment Budget, together with the Capital Strategy for 24-25 onwards. The capital programme reflects capital investment which generates benefit to the county for a period in excess of 1 year. Since the full council meeting on 8 December, at which the current capital programme, which is included in this report as the base capital programme, there has been one addition. This is a grant from the Department for Transport in respect to an additional £3.66 million over 2 years to address potholes. As it was too late to commission the works and spend the £1.83 million in financial year 23-24, it will be done as one programme of works in the financial year 24-25. The proposed additions at Appendix A total £7.63 million, with the appropriate outlined strategic business cases at Appendix E, and this will be financed from prudential borrowing funded by the corporate revenue budget. Paragraph 8 of the report clarifies that approved current capital budgets of £0.2 million in support of the lift replacement and another £2.2 million for the mezzanine floor aspects of the new museum project have been moved to increase the £18 million Stronger Towns Fund, Hereford Museum and Art Gallery redevelopment to £18.4 million. I would like to emphasise that inclusion in the capital programme is not approval to proceed, and that each project will be subject to its own governance. A full business case will be presented for approval where required and in full compliance with the Council's contract procedures as applicable. Paragraph 18 of the report provides further details on the additional projects and shows that under community there are 2 projects: schools accessibility at £1.5 million and children's residential homes for 11 to 18-year-olds at £424,000. Under economy and resources, there are 5 projects: planning and regulatory software at £1.396 million, estates building improvement programme, which includes the Black and White House Museum, Ryfield site and decarbonisation of various other buildings at a total of £2.765 million, building works from 2022 condition surveys of various sites across the county, including Churchill House, Millord Orchard Car Park and Ledbury Library at £745,000, a VM host replacement server at £247,500, and property improvements in care homes at Mallards in Leominster, Southbank Close and Hillside in Hereford at £550,000. The capital strategy, which forms Appendix D of the report, has been developed in full accordance with SIPFA guidelines. The purpose of the capital strategy is to give a clear and concise view of how Herefordshire Council determines its priorities for capital investment, decides how much it can afford to borrow and sets its risk appetite. In line with guidelines, it will require council approval, and this will be updated in line with the County Plan 2024-28 that is currently being developed. The capital investment proposals will support the county plan and the associated delivery plan. The overall aim of capital expenditure is to benefit the community through improved facilities and promoting economic growth. A specific community impact assessment, including any health and safety implications or corporate parenting responsibilities, will be included in that decision report for any new capital scheme commencing and incurring spend. Whilst this budget setting document will not detail specific environmental impacts, considerations will always be made in minimising waste and resources use in line with the Council's environmental policy. In conclusion, I fully endorse this report and propose that its 2 recommendations be approved by Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. Leader of the Council, are you going to second that?
Yes.
And do you want to speak now or later?
Later.
Later, very well. I have Councillor Kenyon. Is there anybody else that wants to speak on this particular matter? Councillor Chowns, Councillor Hitchener, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Matthews, and I'll just stop there, and well, because my pen's running out as well. Councillor Kenyon, Councillor Chowns, and then Councillor Hitchener will be the first 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I must be getting my hand up quick then. Just one point, as you're speaking up there, this pothole fund, everyone loves potholes, or doesn't love them, 3.4 million. Now, is that going to be allocated directly to our partners, Belfast BT, or can it be used within the Lengthman scheme? I see that, reading into it, in urban areas you give £1 for every 2 the urban areas spend, in the parish 1 for 1. Well, the Lengthman within the parish council, if they fix potholes, can the parish or the city councils, or sorry, urban areas, can they reclaim from this pot? Because a pothole appears quickly, and what the public want is a pothole to disappear quickly. And if they know that they can do this and spend a little and get a quick result, you may find that parish councils and urban areas may be happier to fix potholes. So can I have assurances that, or just ask the question, is it a sensible idea? I think it is.
Thank you. Councillor Chowns?
Thank you, Chair. As I've explained in several previous council meetings, I do not support some key elements of the proposed capital budget and therefore can't support it overall. In my view, funding has been directed to projects for which there isn't any evidence base, or there's an insufficiently valid outline business case, so I can have no confidence in those decisions. This administration's decision to borrow money to fund poorly thought through spending is going to place burdens on future generations of taxpayers. It'll result in higher borrowing costs in future. It'll actually increase the debt ratio by about 30% over the next 3 years. That means more pressure on future council taxpayers and, in consequence, more cuts, pressure to cut services yet again because of the impacts on the revenue budget. In my view, that's irresponsible and I cannot support this. With regard to funding for potholes, I'd point out that while the extra £3 million from the Department for Transport is no doubt welcome, it is a drop in the ocean in compared to the £310 million cost, according to the council itself, of bringing our roads back into decent conditions after 14 years of Conservative government cuts to funding for local government. This has brought us to the situation we have, with the infrastructure crumbling around us and under us. Local residents can see this for what it is. It's a sticking plaster approach when actually what we need is fundamental change. We need politicians, councillors and MPs who will stand up for Herefordshire, demand the funding that is required to enable local government to do the good job that we all want it to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hitchener?
Independents for Herefordshire support accelerating the delivery of capital programmes by using the Council's capacity to borrow to get them started sooner. This makes sense for our communities, as capital investment is essential to prime economic growth, encourage high-value jobs, improve the skills mix of our county, and deliver improved, sustainable and affordable local infrastructure. The previous administration made a point of providing the detailed information up front to enable evidence-based decisions to be made, and we seemed able to do that. Sadly, this is not reflected universally with the new administration, as has been mentioned by Councillor Chowns. We have seen some revert to their bad old ways, as evidenced by the delayed, inadequate and partial information begrudgingly provided for the decision to move the library from the footfall heart of the city. It is also evidenced in that the supremacy of full council has been usurped by the way in which the commitment of more than £10 million to the Southern Link Road is being introduced without any evidence to overturn the decision supported by evidence which the Council made in February 2021. To be clear, in February 2021, Council was presented with evidence on the basis of which the policy to implement the SLR was abandoned. This administration is reintroducing this policy without any evidence being presented and without the opportunity for Council to consider such evidence. Without that evidence, none of us, Independents for Herefordshire included, can or should make an informed decision one way or the other about whether the reinstatement of the SLR makes sense for Hereford and for Herefordshire. This includes any lost opportunities for spending money on that project when better value might be obtained by spending money on others. It is a dangerous and slippery slope to allow the reintroduction of roads into policy without a similarly evidenced case being brought to full council. There are many aspects of this capital budget which are excellent and which we support. The outstanding exception is the SLR. However, in the circumstances, we will be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Oliver and Councillor Matthews to speak. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? Councillor Williams, Robert Williams, and Councillor Stark. Okay, I'll go to those, and Councillor James. I'll go to Councillor Oliver, Councillor Matthews, and Councillor Williams as the next batch. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Chan pointed out, this programme is being funded partly by 109,300 of prudential borrowing, which is an interest rate of 4%, would cost the council 4,372,000 interest a year. I hope we've got the revenue to cover that in the future. The second point is social housing, in my view, is the #1 priority to get to be able to house people in property they can afford. I see no mention in this capital programme regarding, I think this is a priority and we must solve the housing problem across the county. Thirdly, the library proposal to transfer it to the installed in the Shire Hall, I would be happy to agree it if I thought that the Shire Hall, although you have 3 million in the programme to improve the Shire Hall so that it can be used again, how long is that going to take? 1, 2, 3 years? I can't see this library being, if we agree to this transfer, being in use for another 3 years, whereas the current proposal, Maylord Orchards, is empty. I would like to see this library built and in use for the people of Hereford. And finally, on the roads, as pointed out, there's 310 million to cover all the road, 2,100 miles of roads and pavements, with the 3,660,000 allocated to potholes. I think we can safely keep our title Pothole Champions of the UK for another year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'll first start off with the legal implications. The council is under a legal duty to sensibly manage capital finance. You know, Chairman, and I repeat that for all capital projects, monthly budget control meetings are now in place to monitor large capital projects, and that was only brought about, and I hate to keep rubbing it in, but it's essential that we get this message home because you have a bit of an history of not delivering value for money in the past. as the report in that correspondence, which I'm there, it's in black and white, which I raised, and the external auditors brought in those recommendations which we adopted to make sure that such large expenditure is far better managed and we get value for money. I go on to mention, as Councillor Hitchener has mentioned, first of all, the two independents have always supported a bypass for Hereford, but one that provides the right value and the right way that will drive this economy forward. The Southern Link Road, we supported that because I did it on environmental and growth for the local economy. Environmental was because of the pollution and the damage it was doing to residents in Belmont Road. That's why we supported that, but it was not for the continuation of a western bypass. It's been mentioned in various papers. This is why I'm saying it before things are progressed when these projects are being considered. That the Link Road, as I said, has supported the environment and the growth. That's why I was behind that. But as far as the western route is concerned, to contemplate taking it through King's Acre and build 7,000 houses to the west of that would mean that we'd have a bypass, or so-called bypass, immediately through the centre of 16,000 dwellings, which to me, that is total irresponsible, and that is why I'm raising it now, to make sure that that is taken into consideration when these projects are being considered. Because then the only way forward is for local businesses is to get the A49 down to Ross, and that's the only way that's going to get this county moving, so that the business community and others can get onto the motorway within a quarter of an hour. Not travel up the A49 for 80 miles to just outside Manchester before they get onto a motorway. That's not progress, that's not vision, that's not looking to the future. So we've got to give this all subject a lot of thought before it goes ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews.
I haven't had my 5 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. You have
5 minutes, group leaders.
No, 3 minutes. No, it's in the main debate.
Oh, get rid of that confounded thing.
Very well. We'll move on. We'll move on swiftly now to Councillor Robert Williams.
As a City Ward member, I just wanted to note and thank the budget, if that's the right word, what you say, but for the City Centre Transport Package, Library and Learning Centre in Shire Hall and Wye Valley Trust Centre, as it obviously enables education in the city and the transport there too. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Stark, Councillor James, and then I'm going to move to Councillor Lester and Stollard and then have the vote. Okay? And can I just remind councillors, you can only speak once in this particular motion, and those that have spoken once I won't call on again, unless of course it's the mover of the motion. So, Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this capital programme is a bit of a curate's egg, we all know that. There's pluses and minuses. If you look at Ross, for example, the investment in Model Farm is very welcome. That's one reason why I will support this capital programme. But I'm very unhappy that the annual plan for highways, particularly the capital programme, does not have 1 inch of Ross roads included in it. And the other concern I have with this capital programme is the fact that if we're not careful, we keep reinvesting in Hereford at the expense of the rest of the county, and we need to bear that in mind. At some stage, we need levelling up within Herefordshire, and the only way you're going to achieve that is through having a balanced capital programme that is of benefit to the whole county and not simply to Hereford itself. But as I said, it's a bit of a curate's egg. I'm sure all councillors will find that is the case. But on the whole, I will support this capital programme as the best that we can have at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Stark stole my curate's egg. As remember, it was a Punch cartoon originally, where the curate was actually eating a foul egg that had gone off and was too polite not to say it was rotten. And when asked what he thought of it, he said, excellent in parts. And, you know, the capital programme is always unpopular certain elements. I've never known a capital programme which I could totally endorse. But on the whole, we have to endorse that. As to actual statement that was said earlier about the fact that the cost of it and the burden put on, we must remember the cancellation of the SLR has put over £20 million burden on the taxpayers of this county for nothing. The public must be reminded of that. Thank you, Chairman. I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you, Councillor James. Right, Councillor Lester, will you second, please?
Yes, and I'll speak now if I may. For me, it's an Easter egg. What I would say is there's lots of exciting things in here. There's investment in roads, economy, culture, learning, and providing better services for Herefordshire. I think it very much has to be a capital programme that is county-wide, and I take on board the comments by Councillor Stark with that regard. Really delighted that this will mean that we're investing in Model Farm. With regard to the £10 million capital allocation for road improvements, where that money is going to be spent around the county is yet to be decided, and I think all councillors should have input into that. So it's not a case that it's not going to be allocated to Ross-on-Wye. That's to be determined. We have to make that money be spent in the best way possible, but that's a discussion that this council needs to have moving forward. With regard to borrowing is going down. The forecast is going down from 141 million down to 119 million pounds. So to say that borrowing is increasing is not the case. With regard to funding about roads, it's great that we've got that extra allocation from government, but I remind the council that the government has said that over the next 11 years, Herefordshire is earmarked for another £106 million. And members who were in the last council will remember that over the last 4 years, the government had given this council £63 million in funding towards roads. So to say that the government has not put money aside to address our road infrastructure is not true.
I have a point of order from Councillor Chowns.
Just on the point about borrowing, the council's own papers show that the debt to expenditure ratio is increasing, and at a time of increasing interest rates, that's surely not a responsible thing to do for poorly thought through projects.
Thank you. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Just the figures from 141 million down to 119 million are in the papers. So, but okay. And lastly, just to finish up, it's absolutely right that this council has a really good strategic approach to ensuring that there are affordable houses in this county. I take on Councillor Oliver's point, but that's. We had a good debate about that in the last council meeting, and everyone will note that there is £1 million allocated to strategic housing in the proposal that we are putting forward and we'll be debating very shortly. But I think there's a lot of positives in here. It's going to be extremely important that we follow on a lot of the projects, especially delivering a library, and with this capital budget as proposed, we can move forward in achieving those aspirations for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stoddard, you have the right to sum up, and just to remind you, there was a question from Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to Councillor Kenyon's question, the funding will be going into the continuation of the programme we started this year, and we'll focus on those roads where our surveys have shown the greatest needs. Working through to Councillor Chowns' question about borrowing, I would like to say that overall borrowing has reduced the MTFS period, has reduced over the MTFS period, and this is noted in Table 5, the Treasury Management Strategy for 24-25. Prudential borrowing estimates have reduced from £141, which is noted in the 23-24 strategy at para 2.1 of the 23 report, and it's now down at £119 million in this year's Treasury Management Strategy, which is part of the paper that will come in the next point for debate. Picking up then on Councillor Oliver's point, as the leader just mentioned, he may want to listen as I go through the revenue budget and we address street housing, and also the library will be open in August 2026. And on Councillor Stark's point, levelling up is very much centre in this council, in this administration's plans, and is a bit like, to use the egg analogy, as a rather junior member now of the council, I refer to it as a Kinder egg. We're looking at levelling up, and we're putting employment land funding in here across the whole county. So we're very much now moving away from a Hereford city-centric to a Herefordshire county-wide approach. And I commend this capital programme.
Thank you. That concludes the debate on this particular motion. I'm now going to move to the recommendations. The recommendations are there on page, with regard to approve the revised capital programme at Appendix C, which is on page 209 and 10, and approve the capital strategy at Appendix D, which is pages 211 to 231. This will be done by a named vote, and we will do it in alphabetical order. I'll call on the monitoring officer to read out the names.
If you could indicate whether you are for, against or abstaining. Councillor Andrews. For. Councillor Baker. For. Councillor Bartlett. Against. Councillor Bartram. For. Councillor Biggs. For. Councillor Bolter. For. Councillor Bramer. For. Councillor Chowns. Councillor Cole. For. Councillor Cornthwaite. For. Councillor Crockett. For. Councillor Dave Davis. For. Councillor Durkin. For. Councillor Dykes. For. Councillor Fagan. For. Councillor Foxton. For. Councillor Gandy. For. Councillor Jennard. Councillor Hamblin. For. Councillor Heathfield. Councillor Highfield. For. Councillor Hitchener.
For.
Councillor Hercombe. For. Councillor James. For. Councillor Kenyon. For. Councillor Lester. For. Councillor Mason. For. Councillor Matthews. For. Councillor O'Driscoll. For. Councillor Oliver. Abstain. Councillor Owens. For. Councillor Pebbody. Councillor Phillips. For. Councillor Dan Powell. For. Councillor Ivan Powell. For. Councillor Price. For. Councillor Proctor. For. Councillor Simmons.
Abstain.
Councillor Spencer. Councillor Stark. Sorry, could you repeat that? Councillor Stark. For. Thank you. Councillor Stoddart. For. Councillor Stone. For. Councillor Swinglehurst. Councillor Thomas. For. Councillor Tillett. For. Councillor Alan Williams. For. Councillor Robert Williams. For. Councillor Woodall.
Against.
Yeah, let me count them up.
Just get those counted up.
Oh, you done it? I trust your one. Well,
39,
5 against, and 4 abstentions.
5 against.
And 4 abstentions. Very well.
Yeah, I've got that against.
The capital investment budget and capital strategy has been passed by 39 votes for, 5 against, and 4 abstentions. Thank you. In accordance with the email I sent, is it your wish that we adjourn now for a short break before we begin the substantive motion? I suggest that would be 10 minutes. It's coming up to 1:15. We will be on at 11:30. Very well. Thank you. Welcome back, colleagues. We now come to the substantive item on the agenda, item 10, which is the 24-25 budget setting. These are laid out on pages 245 to 342, and it is to approve the budget and the associated medium-term financial strategy and the Treasury management strategy. Now, please note that the budget setting report on these pages and the proposed budget amendments published in the budget amendments supplement on the 8th and 9th of February. And also note that section 25 of additional statements from the section 151 officer in relation to the budget amendments. In this case, we have only had one amendment, and I confirm that that has been placed before the 151 officer, and he has confirmed it. You will all, of course, receive the briefing note of those procedures as published on the 2nd of February, and I sent you a further reminder on Tuesday of this week. I therefore propose that we will have an initial debate on the proposed budget as is proposed by the Cabinet. Once I have deemed that there has been sufficient debate on that budget, I will then move to the amendment. We will then deal with the amendment, probably vote on the amendment, and judging on what the outcome of that is, it either gets very complicated or we then go back to the substantive motion, which will then be a matter of just summing up from the main speakers. So is everybody quite clear on those? I'll be calling on the group leaders to speak first, and then I will be turning to members on the substantive motion. So I invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services to move the report on the 2004-2025 budget. And Councillor Stollard, you have 10 minutes to propose this budget.
Thank you, Chair. When I introduced the 2024-25 draft revenue budget to Cabinet on the 14th of December, I mentioned that it was a draft budget and that we would be conducting consultation with council members, council scrutiny committees, local businesses and the public. A total of 13 locality-specific consultation events were undertaken in each of the market towns and twice in Hereford City Centre as part of the Christmas market. Additional targeted consultation was undertaken with specific sections of the community, young people at Hereford Sixth Form College at a Young Farmers event, businesses at a Hereford Means Business conference, older people attending the 50-plus Christmas lunch at the Kindle Centre, and families attending the holidays activities and food Christmas event. Approximately 652 people were engaged with across the 13 events, and a further 326 participated through the online survey. This is a significant increase in the numbers previously recorded. We have also spoken with many council members and have provided additional information to Scrutiny Management Board in 2 separate meetings in January, and have also provided significant evidence and information to the Children's Task and Finish Group. The draft revenue budget I presented to the Cabinet on the 14th of December was based on our estimated funding from the central government settlement. I'm very pleased to announce that the central government settlement was better than expected to the sum of £2.5 million, made up of £824,000 new homes bonus and £1.7 million of other movements in grants and core funding. Furthermore, following direct engagement with the County Council Network, Local Government Authority, Rural Services Network, including our chair, large county councils and a number of MPs, the Department for Levelling Up Housing Communities have reviewed the recent settlement and announced on the 24th of January an increase that's estimated to be worth £945,000 of Rural Services Delivery Grant and Social Care Grant of £1.835 million for a Social Care Grant for Herefordshire. The revised budget for 24-25 is now £210.5 million. As I mentioned on the 14th of December, should the government settlement be better than estimated, then we'd look at what we'd do with this. As this Conservative-led administration has shown before, we do listen to the people of Herefordshire, and the consultation that's taken place and discussions with fellow councillors, I'm able to announce today that the planned increase in the general increased parking element, car parking charges, that was an action that we'd taken from the previous administration, is now cancelled at a cost of £400,000. In the debate on the 8th of December, the leader mentioned that strategic housing remained a priority for this administration. As part of the government settlement, we received £820,000 from the new housing bonus, which this administration will increase to £1 million, which will be allocated in support of strategic housing activities. The Leominster Heritage Action Zone, which received government funding in 2019, but due to dithering by the previous administration, did not commence work until last year when the cost had increased and was subsequently paused. It is this administration's intention to level up across the county, and in demonstration of this will now allocate £300,000 to make up this shortfall and enable this vital project to go ahead and support the residents of Leominster. Following consultation with council colleagues, we'll also remove the planned reduction of library opening hours by 10% at a cost of £55,000. We'll support the Economy and Environment Directorate through the provision of funding officer resource to support extra funding opportunities at a cost of up to £56,000, and will provide £200,000 support for the community and volunteer sector. We are aware that parish councils have set the Lensman scheme of work for the next financial year based on the value that they received last year. That figure was higher than the budgeted figure of £60 per kilometre due to a rollover of previous year's funding. To enable parish councils to meet their planned schemes of work, we will now allocate an additional £250,000 to them for this year. We have also heard the comments from parish councils, walkers groups and Councillor Fagan at the Scrutiny Management Board on the 16th of January regarding the current condition of the public right-of-way network. Having listened to these comments, we'll now allocate an additional £250,000 to address those elements that are keeping footpaths across Herefordshire closed. The aim being to open all 2,000 kilometres of footpaths across the county in support of well-being for the population and support for tourism. The recent bad weather has had an adverse effect on the condition of the road networks due to poor drainage, and listening to parish councils' concerns, we've allocated £445,000 to address drainage works across the road network. These last three items will be funded from the additional rural grant that was announced on the 24th of January. And finally, we'll allocate £500,000 to financial reserves and £1.835 million from the social care grant to a new social care resilience reserve, thus beginning the process of rebuilding our reserves. This draft revenue budget totals £210.5 million and includes a 4.99% increase in council tax. We are aware that there are a number of residents who will struggle with this increase, and as we all know, earlier in this meeting, we brought forward a proposal in regard to contingent council tax reduction, which was passed unanimously. The draft revenue budget proposed for each directorate is shown at paragraph 16 and is detailed at Appendix B. I would, however, like to remind you all that the moratorium on expenditure above £500 and the linked expenditure control panel, which is in place this year, will now be extended into financial year 24-25 and will be a key driver in monitoring spending and, with other mechanisms, delivering the planned budget. The medium-term financial strategy at Appendix A is the Council's key financial planning document and sets out the Council's budget for 24-25 and the financial plan for the next 3 years out to 2027-28. Table 1 shows the cumulative funding gap of £1.9 million over the medium-term financial period. This is a significantly better position from the MTFs that we inherited from the previous administration that showed a cumulative gap of £15.8 million over the same 4-year period. Whilst there are significant challenges ahead, this MTFS ensures that the Council's finances are aligned to its strategic priorities with a clear focus on transformation to ensure the financial stability of the Council and the services that it delivers to the people of Herefordshire. The Treasury Management Strategy at Appendix D has been prepared to comply with the Department for Levelling Up Housing Community statutory guidance on local government investments, DLUC statutory guidance on minimum revenue provision, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy Prudential Code for Capital Finance and Local Authorities, and CIPFA's Treasury Management and the Public Services. The borrowing strategy is that the Council borrows to fund capital expenditure, with borrowing driven by the requirements of the approved capital investment budget. The current loan debt of £121.3 million is detailed at Annex A. In Table 5 of the Treasury Management Strategy, it shows that the prudential borrowing estimates have reduced from £141 million in 22-24 to down to £190 million in this year, or the next financial year. The objective of the investment strategy is to ensure prudence is applied and risks are managed when the Council holds surplus funds. That's income received in advance of expenditure. As at the 31st of October 2023, the Council has £78.9 million of investments spread across banks other local authorities and money market funds, and the current investment portfolio is detailed at Annex A. Finally, the earmarked reserves at Appendix E show that taking into consideration the 2023-24 Q2 forecast outturn before management action of £13.8 million will see our reserve balance drop to £66.8 million, which, as I mentioned earlier, this Conservative-led administration will be seek to grow by adding £2.5 million to the balance during financial year 24-25. The Q3 forecast outturn I will report to Cabinet on the 22nd of February, but I'm pleased today to report that following management recovery action and tight controls over expenditure, the outturn position for 23-24 has reduced from 13.8 million to 10.7 million, and with further management action this is expected to reduce to 9.4 million. Controls will continue over the final quarter of the financial year, and we expect the overspend to reduce further. This positive movement provides valuable assurances over the effectiveness of the controls in place and the robustness of the Council's financial management. Furthermore, savings now forecast to be achieved and reductions in agency staff costs in the Children and Young People's Directorate demonstrates that the savings proposed for 24-25 are both realistic and deliverable. This reduction in overspend means that the amount drawn down from earmarked reserve balances to manage any overspend this year will be less, preserving the Council's reserve balances for future use. Following standard practice adopted by the previous administration, as evidenced in their responses to the Scrutiny Management Board recommendation last year, the level of reserves will be kept under review as part of any routine in-year financial monitoring and forecasting to ensure that balances remain prudent and balance the need to support current and future challenges. In conclusion, and bearing in mind the context of the wider poor economic situation that surrounds us, I would like to remind Council that we have achieved a deliverable balanced budget of £210.5 million, that our medium-term financial strategy shows that we'll be able to deliver balanced budgets over the 4-year period of the strategy, and finally, that we have strong reserves which will only increase as we begin to pay surplus back into them. This is a situation that many other local authorities would wish to find themselves in. I have no hesitation in recommending this draft budget, and the Council should approve all 10 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. The Leader of the Council, do you want to, you have a right to second, you're second the report. Do you want to speak now or later?
Later.
Thank you. What I propose to do now is, as outlined beforehand, is that I will call on representatives, the leaders or representatives of all the 4 groups' leaders, to speak for 5 minutes each, and then I will open the debate on this particular budget that has been proposed before us. And after a substantial amount of time, I'll then move to deal with the amendment. So I'll call upon the group leaders first in their orders. Can I begin with Councillor James?
Thank you, Chairman. We all get, well, some of us get very excited about the budget debate, but in the end, it's really just about the level of council tax as far as the public are concerned. The budget that lies behind it can change during the year and will need to change and will change, as it has done in every council in the country. We initially, as a Lib Devon group, were not too happy with the original draft budget, but following discussions and lobbying, we are pleased that certain changes have been made. The anti-car strategy, which seems to have existed in this council for too long, the milking of the car park, the car user has to come to an end, and I noticed that at the point at which Christmas, when I was able to get into car parks in the centre of the city quite easily, because people weren't coming into Hereford like they were. My neighbours don't shop in Hereford anymore because of the punitive charges that exist in Hereford, and that's got to come to an end. A friend of mine actually went to a service in the cathedral and had to pay £8 to go to the service in car parking charges. So that we welcome. The money for strategic housing also we are supportive of. And the original proposal to reduce the library opening hours, I think, was an ill thought out and rather churlish proposal which wouldn't produce much savings anyway. We've covered by the model farm within the capital budget, but there are things in there here that we can support. But in the end, all we are ultimately voting for is a wish list, but we are voting for the level of council tax. And now, after the last so many years, 8 to 10 years, where funding from central government is reduced by 60 million, can you imagine what we could be doing now if we were funded by central government at the same rate that we were 8 to 10 years ago? We wouldn't have all this problem. Central government have the advantage of being able to, if they haven't got the money, they just print the money. Their debt is 10 times what our debt is per head of population. It is enormous, the debt that we have. Since 2010, it's gone up from about 700 to 800 billion to between 3 and 4 times that. It's heading towards 4 times that amount of debt. That hasn't happened on this council, so we must be thankful for that. So on balance, I think that we will support this amendment, this proposal, and look forward to the debate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Chance.
Thank you, Chair. Let's just take a moment to kind of remind ourselves of the context for this budget. As set out in the papers, what we're facing is £43 million of budget pressures for next year. That means that it would cost an extra £43 million next year to provide the same services that we've provided this year, due mainly to the increase in demand, 25 million, and inflation, out of control inflation, an extra 12.5 million. But we don't have £43 million, so we are having to make what the council calls savings and efficiencies, more than £20 million of savings and efficiencies. What that means is £20 million of cuts to public services. It doesn't have to be this way. You know, local government has been squeezed dry by central government since 2010, absolutely cut to the bone. But local government is the front line of public services. You know, who cleans the streets, collects the bins, maintains the roads, looks after our most vulnerable citizens, children and adults? Councils do. They look after those who need that extra care and support. And they do a heroic job in the context of impossible conditions which have been created by those last 14 years of cuts. And let's not forget, both of our Herefordshire MPs have repeatedly voted for the cuts to which were previously referred. The website theyvoteforyou.com helpfully records this. It records that in 2015, both of our Herefordshire MPs voted to reduce the main central government grant to local councils by a 25% cut. The next year, another 25% cut. The year after that, a 44% cut. The year after that, a 28% cut. The year after that, a 56% cut in central government funding to local government. You get the picture. Our MPs have never stood up for local councils to have the funding that they need to care for our vulnerable and to repair our roads. And instead, they've repeatedly voted to cut council funding to the bone. And these swinging cuts have created real problems, compounded by the fact that this government now only provides a 1-year funding settlement to councils. So councils have no clarity and security about the funding that they will get from 1 year to the next. This is no way to run a country. Now, I acknowledge that colleagues in the Cabinet have been caught between a rock and a hard place, essentially, in trying to decide where the axe will fall to find those £20 million of cuts. There is very little wriggle room when you're compiling a revenue budget. But while I acknowledge that and the efforts that have no doubt been made in good faith by members of the Cabinet and by officers, of course, I cannot vote for a budget that cuts services still further, nor for a budget with some of the specific measures here. So, for example, we've got a proposal to simply delete vacant posts in order to save money. This is not a strategic approach to workforce planning. The budget doesn't provide any justifications for the assumptions that it makes about reducing demand for children's social workers, and it makes what we could politely or perhaps ironically call heroic assumptions for some of the other savings, including for other contracts, for the MERS scheme and for Thrive, especially in the context of the Thrive overspend thus far. We have to say enough is enough. Local councils have been cut to the bone again and again over the last 14 years. We're like councils in general across the country are like the proverbial frog in the pot of boiling water with the heat turned up and up as the funding is turned down and down. And at some point, we have to say these cuts are no longer tenable. We need to send a clear message to central government. We need local politicians who will stand up for Herefordshire and to stand up to demand the funding that we need to repair our public services. And for those reasons, I cannot vote for this revenue budget.
Thank you, Councillor Chowns. Councillor Hitchener, are you speaking on behalf of the group?
Yes, if I
indeed,
may.
yes. As you know, Councillor Harvey is unwell, so Councillor Hitchener will speak on behalf of the Independents for Herefordshire. Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you. So 12 years and counting of this government's ideology of austerity sees public services in this country, local government included, stretched beyond breaking point and cuts made deep into the bone. The stark reality of being at the helm of a local authority is that any administration, no matter the political hue, has no choice but to maximise local tax-raising powers as the relentless squeeze on finance continues. And so it is for this Conservative administration, despite their publicity leading up to the election in May. Independents in Herefordshire are not going to do as other groups did while we were in administration and make fiscally reckless proposals that just do not work. We should continue to treat the electorate as responsible adults and tell them the inconvenient truth. As councillors here today, it is our responsibility to do what we can to minimise the terrible impact of rising local taxation here in Herefordshire with our stubbornly low wage and eye-wateringly high house price economy. In previous years, we targeted significant levels of funding to provide additional support services to those made most in need, and it's good to see that in this budget, our initiatives have been continued. Our determination to invest in communities and enable local people to respond to local need continues with the Talk Community Initiative, the retention of match funding for the Parish Linksman Scheme, and grants for heritage, arts and culture projects. 2/3 of this council's funding is directed to deliver statutory services to support the most vulnerable in society, and in that we are no different to almost every other council in the country. We welcome continued investment in transforming service delivery by making better use of technology and digital cleverness. Hopefully this will make the penny stretch just a little bit further. However, connectivity to the internet is essential to the functioning of a 21st century way of life, and the plugging of the county's many internet not-spots is core to enabling our residents to work from home, build businesses throughout our rural communities, and to enjoy to the full the benefits which come from living in this beautiful county. We are welcoming the protectors of our rivers to this council meeting today, but we feel that 9 months into this administration, there's been a slowdown of the initiatives we have set in train and little new to show towards progressing returning our rivers to health. There is a great leadership role for a visionary council to play in delivering this change. We welcome continued work to improve the operation of our waste collection and disposal contracts and for the work undertaken to deliver options for sustainable living through the planning process and through investment in transport infrastructure improvements that can evidence their climate credentials. We especially welcome the £945,000 increase in rural services grant and the contribution made by the Chairman in that respect. With the allocation of the Lengthman scheme, additional funding for drainage works across the county, and you only have to drive through the pools of water in our roads last night and this morning to know how desperately important that is. Improvements to public rights of way, each of which are elements which did receive additional funding during the last administration. We are, however, concerned that Council genuinely approves an achievable balanced budget today. An amendment will be tabled proposing to improve the chances for this whilst protecting discretionary services from yet more cuts. Beyond that, we find little to disagree with this budget because, let's face it, while the current Conservative government is in power, which seems determined to deprive local government of essential financial support to well-run councils such as ours, whoever is in charge has little latitude to do more than keep statutory services going as best they can while trying to keep the discretionary ones in existence. We will be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Hitchener. And finally, Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Back a few weeks ago, Chairman, you'll be aware that when the issue came up at Cabinet about the increase in car parking charges, I immediately raised it and made it publicly known that I would be submitting a motion at the full council meeting. Because I felt it was the fees had got extortionate, and the simple reason is people visiting the city from our market, visit the city in our market towns are vital to the prosperity of the businesses that rely on customer visiting their premises. By removing this increase in parking charges, the council will be supporting businesses and our residents who have to pay extortionate car parking fees, which deters shoppers from coming into Hereford and the market towns. Rural residents and visitors from neighbouring counties are the worst affected because mainly their only mode of transport is by car. The cost of living pressures generally is also something we must bear in mind. There's already areas of severe poverty in the county generally. The proposed rise would have done nothing for our economy. It would merely driven people away and closing more shops and further loss of jobs. So I warmly welcome that, and I like to think that the motion I submitted, which was submitted and seconded by Councillor James, had some influence on it. But either way, common sense has prevailed, and we warmly welcome it. The other issue that I picked up was on page 249, on school transport. Councillor Price is aware that there's obviously a shortfall in funding there, and I hope something can be done to address that. I've got parents at Crednhill paying £1,800 per year to send their children from Crednhill to Webley. And we're paying substantial 106 money into the Webley area and into Webley School. Yet we're shown as the catchment area is Whitecross. But Whitecross School is full and they can't take any more. So I know Council Price is addressed in that. So I hope that the Cabinet can support him and make sure that that worrying issue is dealt with. Because as I said, and as far as the parking, going back to the parking, I was talking to some nurses who already pay substantial fees to park at Garrick House, which is unacceptable. And I also urge Cabinet, as soon as the multi-storey car park is built at the present bus station, which a motion was approved by this council back some 18 months ago, as soon as that is freed up, that a multi-storey car park is put there and that one floor is allocated to health staff to help to alleviate those problems. I support the recommendations, Leader, and I hope that those issues will be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Now, I will now open this matter to debate from all members. You have 3 minutes in which you can make comments on the budget that has been presented before us. Can I have indications of speakers, please? Councillor Alan Williams, Councillor Proctor, wait a minute, Singlehurst, Driscoll, Highfield. Right, let's just stop there now before my pen runs out again. So, Councillor Alan Williams. Oh, sorry, do you want a second first? You're seconding later, aren't you? Councillor Alan Williams, followed by, I can't read my writing now, Councillor Proctor and then Councillor Swindlehurst. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. I congratulate this administration on producing this budget, the whole team. I think a special mention should be made to my colleague from Bromyard and Brinksley. He's done a terrific amount of work, I understand. You've had heavy workload since this May election, which was some 8 months ago. I disagree, it's 9, it's 8 and a bit really, but still, we want split hairs ago. You have sorted and picked through what I would describe a real mess, a mess you inherited. I'm delighted with the 250,000 allocated for the Pro, the Lensman scheme, 400,000 to prevent higher parking charges, as Mr. Matthews, Councillor Matthews has mentioned several times. Also your wisdom in supporting the public realm work in Leominster with 300,000. After all, it is the premier town in North Hertfordshire. I'm delighted to endorse this budget and I support it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Proctor.
The revisions made to this budget as it passed through the process moved in the direction of Liberal Democrat priorities. And in particular, from my point of view, what I take to be a small down payment on a serious investment in strategic housing is something that I very much welcome, and so I will be able to support the proposal. I just want to draw attention to the fact that the figures add up because of heroic assumptions around the savings that can be made through transformation, in particular the use of technology for transformation. I've spent a lot of my career, including some time in this very council, attempting to make savings through digital transformation. I fully support the fact that those savings are there to be made, but to really generate those savings in the next financial year, you needed to start about 3 or 4 years ago. Now, I accept that this administration wasn't able to do that, but I feel like that is a significant risk to deliver this budget, and I'd like to understand what the administration will be doing to make sure that they keep on top of those saving figures, because my experience tells me that it will be extremely difficult to generate those savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Councillor Swindlehurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Councillor James is right. It's the council tax setting that we have to pay due regard to. 2.99% plus 2% is not, I think, where any of us would want to be. But we have to acknowledge the pressures that the council is under, and inflation and living wage and rising demands. But this requires a measured approach to manage, and I think this revenue budget is a measured approach. It's prudent and it seeks to be just. There's an eye to the medium term to getting the council's finances to a sustainable place. Despite the challenging times, the proposal is to increase the base budget of children and young people from roughly 50 million to 65, community wellbeing 68 to 76. So, there's, the acknowledgement is there, the pressures are there. We have to come up with the answers. But it's also important to note, and I do pay tribute to Councillor Stoddart's work here. He's done a lot of work, but this is not the product of one person's view. There's been a lot of consultation and a lot of listening has gone on, and I think we've really tried to be collaborative. And I think credit needs to therefore go to members of the public who responded to consultations, to the input of the scrutiny boards who spent a lot of time going through this and giving very constructive input, and also constructive input from other members. And it's that kind of joint approach, I think, that has made this a better budget, and I'd like to pay due regard to that. For myself, I'm really pleased to see the funding for the Lensman rural parishes, and they know how important that role is, so they give fabulous value for money. I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased to see that we've got money to open all the public rights of way networks. I mean, that it's critical. It's about well-being. It's about connecting people to nature. We want to have that open. So I'm really pleased to see that money, extra money into drainage. Great. So I think we are where we are. I think this is a really, really good budget. I'm just going to finish though by taking exception to Councillor Hitchner. I hope he didn't kind of mean it too seriously. This point about that we're not serious about the river. We're deeply serious about the river, but I don't think that political game playing over it helps. I really, really don't. We need to be collaborative, and it's and with that in mind, please all come to the to welcome the water of the Wye as it comes in after this meeting. We all own this problem. We all love that river, and can we please not play politics with it? Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Driscoll, Councillor Highfield and Councillor Stark. Is there anybody else that wants to speak on this motion? Sorry, yeah, Councillor Williams and Councillor Woodall and Councillor Woodhall. Oh, very well. So, and Councillor Dave Davis and Councillor Oliver, sorry. Okay, right, I'll get through those. So we'll go to Councillor Driscoll, Highfield and Stark as the next batch of three. Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to start by highlighting one of the smaller changes to this budget that came about, I believe, through constructive dialogue with the Liberal Democrat group. And that is the allocation of £56,000 for the provision of a funding officer. I think it's vitally important for the community and volunteer groups across the county to have funding support. Somebody who speaks the language of funders and has an understanding of nationwide funding opportunities. And I'm confident that this investment will actually bring in many hundreds of thousands of pounds in additional funding to Herefordshire every year. And that's money that would otherwise not find its way into our county. And I do have one request, though, and that is that we somehow allocate a small seed funding budget to this new post, possibly from the £200,000 that we've allocated to support the community and voluntary sector, as this will greatly enhance the impact of what that I know the Liberal Democrats believe to be a very important new initiative. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Highfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to first of all say that I'm a fairly new councillor, but I've heard the explanations of the budget several times during our internal discussions and talking to other people from other parties. And I'm very impressed with the amount of work that's done. And overall, I really like this budget. And the particular items that I like about it, or it's been mentioned by several people, but the public rights of way is an issue that I've become quite involved with in my ward and in general. And this, I think, is only the beginning. The whole situation with public rights of way has been a bit of a mess. And this contribution from the budget to start putting it right is very important, and it's important to the parishioners in the villages in particular. And along that lines, I very much like the support for the Lengthsman scheme in the parishes. They will be very grateful that they're going to get more local say in how they sort out their own problems in their own areas, and that will be very much appreciated. And as for the alleged cuts that some of our councillors are alleging, I can't see any cuts. I can see savings to make more efficiencies, and they seem to be achievable and reasonable. And so I don't know where there's any cuts to be made. I can see lots of extra money being spent on all sorts of areas, which we've fought to find a way to produce. So I'd like to support the budget wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Chair. We are where we are with this budget. Let's be honest about it, members. We wouldn't have wanted this budget if we could have had complete choice over it. I'm going to support the budget because I was told by others that I can't legally not support it, since if I wanted to cut children's services, I would probably be taken to task in terms of my responsibilities, particularly my fiduciary responsibilities. But this budget shouldn't be seen in isolation. This budget is a 24-25 budget, which is going to have implications for 25-26 and the medium-term financial strategy beyond that. This budget includes 19.5 million savings, which is almost the equivalent of 10% of the total budget itself. A huge risk. I really do need to see more evidence that budget control and budget management is actually taking place throughout the year for me to be comfortable with this one. I'm going to support the budget, Chair, but I really do need to bring that point up. If we don't get this right for 24-25, then we're going to suffer when it comes to 25-26, and that's a great worry. So it touches upon what Councillor Proctor said and what Councillor James has said. We really do need to make sure we deliver those savings, and that we as a council are kept up to date month on month about progress, so we can take action if we have to. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Now, I'll move now to Councillor Robert Williams, Councillor Woodall, Councillor Davis and Councillor Oliver. And then I've got no other people wishing to speak on this main motion. And then, if everyone's content, I will then move to the amendment. Is everyone clear? Very well then. So, Councillor Robert Williams.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to say I'll use my airtime to discuss elements within our council work, not other political agendas. I think it's a really good all-Herefordshire budget with the consultation events that we've had, and it reflects a lot more of the wider community than historically. To echo Councillor Driscoll's words about the funding officer, fully agree with having that post. Having worked for the authority a few years ago and seeing that post holder really, do their bit, and the money that comes from outside of the county is really important. And also, finally, about the reversal on parking, because effectively it's another form of taxation to our population. So the fact we've been able to freeze it's really good. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be supporting the budget because of the allocation towards that much delayed public realm work in Leinster. So thank you for that. And it came from a surprise bonus from a government. But however, I would like to see funding to improve our rural bus services as supported by your consultation, which made it the top issue. Better bus services would, of course, reduce traffic, and as a result, reduce the potholes which are created by traffic, and it would help reduce the congestion in towns. And by providing better transport for school bus services, as has already been mentioned, we could also hopefully move towards a situation where that sort of horrific accident that was reported in the news today that happened to an 11-year-old schoolboy in Bromyard would be avoided. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add my own comments to the capital investment budget and capital strategy. I support it wholly. I think the investment in the highways is going to be really key for all of us for the ongoing future. I know my ward members would be very pleased to hear about the investment that's going to take place. Also, as been iterated by other councillors, the PROW and the car parking charges investments are really critical as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, we have to support this budget. There's no real alternative. All of our funding raised by council tax and business rates has to be directed to children's services and social services. We can try and make savings in there, and using agency workers is expensive, and if we can change that, that's great. But there's very little floss that we can direct to others. I'm reminded of a line from the Roman poet Ovid, 43 BC to 18 AD. Video meliora proboque, sed deteriora sequor. I see better things and approve, but I follow the worse. We can all see better things we could spend money on, that we'd like to spend money on. Social housing, we've got 1 million there, and I'd like to see that really spent well. Bus services, etc., and the roads. But there is no alternative. We're stripped of the money from government. So as I say, we can see better things, but we follow the worst. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver, and I think for raising the quality of our debate and bringing a bit of Latin to it. Can I just say the pressure is on to the rest of you now in this debate. We're now completed the discussion on this particular motion before us. I'm now going to move to the amendment. Now, can I just remind everybody that amendments that were proposed to this budget had to be placed before the 151 officers to ensure that they were sound and deliverable, and this amendment has passed that hurdle. It was shared with you all and should be on your papers in front of you as well. It was originally in the name of Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey, unfortunately, is not well today, so it is going to be proposed by Councillor Fagan and then Councillor Hitchener. I'll ask Councillor Fagan to propose it, and after she started speaking, we will put the motion up on the screen. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid my Latin is not very great, and all I know is that in walking it is solved, the English version. But this amendment aligns with the recommendations of the Scrutiny Management Board and the Task and Finish report, which was presented to the Children's and Young People Scrutiny Committee in January. Extensive efforts from both committees assessed the credibility of the Children's Directorate budget and particularly the proposed savings for the 2024-25 period. Despite assurances provided in 2022 and 2023 regarding confidence in the allocation for the Children's Directorate, the service began each year with immediate forecasts of overspending amounting to 6 million in 2022 and 13 million in 2023. Furthermore, in 2023, no savings were achieved, and as of the present, none are projected to be realised by the end of this financial year. The Task and Finish group, which was undertaken to look at this particular issue, established that the service's in-year performance and budget preparation for 2024 received monthly reports indicating that service areas had yet to furnish delivery plans for their in-year savings. From the budget documents, it's evident that the current administration must tap into the Council's reserves to cover the in-year shortfall, presently estimated at 13.8 million. As yet, we still do not know which earmarked reserves are intended to address this shortfall and the ramifications of depleting these funds, which were previously earmarked for specific purposes. We are all aware of the repercussions when budgets are not met, and that other areas of the Council, particularly universal services provided by the Economy and Environment Directorate, are compelled to further tighten their budgets to offset overspending. Councillors, we lack evidence from the past 2 financial years to support the notion that these savings targets are achievable. We know there are considerable effort underway within children's services, but the worst case scenario is that the Directorate once again fails to meet its budgetary obligations and no savings are realised to replenish the reserves. In this case, we will be no worse off than we are presently. The best case scenario is that this administration fulfills its assurances, savings are realised and reserves are replenished to their current levels. However, in either scenario, the other service areas of the Council remain safeguarded. This amendment is foolproof and demonstrates, in the face of 2 years of evident challenges, that this Council adopts a prudent approach to its budgetary matters while persistently challenging its service areas to innovate. I would urge all members from sides of the Chamber to support the amendment, and I thank Councillor Harvey for the work that she has put into this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fagan. Councillor Hitchener, you're seconding the amendment. Do you want to speak now or later?
Later, please, Chair.
Very well. Now then, so we're now debating the amendment as is proposed. Do I have any speakers? Councillor Stollard, Councillor James and Councillor Highfield to start with, and Councillor Lester. Okay, so let's begin with Councillor Stollard.
Councillor Stoddard has the right to reply on the amendment, so he doesn't...
Oh, right, he has a right to reply to amendment. Okay, and I'll move straight to Councillor James then.
Thank you, Chairman. I find some difficulty, well, no difficulty with this particular amendment, but I do say, you know, it is a technical matter, and it is a matter about whether we take some money out of our left pocket and put it into our right pocket, and then pay for something. And it's about accountability, and I'm not sure, although I probably will support it, and I think probably my group will support the amendment, but I don't think it will achieve much. It's just there we are. What we need is accountability and up-to-date data on how it's going. And the quarterly papers that are produced looking at how we're progressing as far as the cuts are not regular enough. And I do urge that the council produce regular monthly updates as far as the where we're going as far as the budget savings are concerned. I, like others in this council, will be very, very surprised if we actually hit these particular savings. But I don't think it's going to make a blind bit of difference one way or the other, to be perfectly frank. You know, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Well, no, we're robbing ourselves to pay ourselves. So, yeah, let's try it. But you know, I have my doubts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Highfield, then Councillor Lester, and then Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a member of the Children and Young Persons Scrutiny Committee, and I was on the Task and Finish group, and I 100% share Councillor Fagan and Councillor Harvey's disappointment about the failure to meet savings in the previous years. However, I am much happier with the explanations and not promises, but the explanation for how the savings will actually be achieved this time that we're hoping to see. And therefore, because of that, I'd like to put my trust in the director and his staff that are working so hard on the improvement programme, and therefore I am against the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Highfield. Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Fagan for stepping in for Councillor Harvey, but also thank you to Councillor Harvey for bringing forward an amendment. It's created debate, and it will create debate in this chamber, and I think that's a positive thing. And I know that Councillor Harvey and the scrutiny committee process have been sceptical about the ability to deliver savings. So I fully appreciate why this amendment has come forward. But I did email Councillor Harvey and say, whilst I welcome it and I thanked her for the amendment, I was not going to be in a position to support the amendment. And there are several reasons why. I hear what Councillor James has said in terms of taking it from one pocket to put it into another. But this proposal would ring fence resilience reserves that the council could be using for other means if it's necessary. The second point is, in this budget that we're proposing, we are putting aside £1.3 million to ensure that we have a social care contingency. We have increased the base budget, as Councillor Swinglehurst said. You know, it's gone from 50 million to 65 million. That's a significant investment in children's services. And thirdly, lastly, sorry, the point I would make is that the savings that we want to do is to focus on and get that service that we want to have. We want to reduce looked after numbers. We want to reduce the situation with regard to agency, because we want a more permanent workforce, and these savings measures are really targeting our ambitions in a way, because that's the service that we want. I appreciate there's scepticism about achieving those savings. We've heard from Councillor Stoddart that things are progressing well in achieving those savings. We did hear evidence in the scrutiny process about how savings are being made. But I accept the scepticism, but I'm sure that if we're committed to the programme that we've set forward, and we see the evidence that's been put before us already, then I think we should stick to our guns. And so, unfortunately, I will not be able to support the amendment, but I welcome other people's contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. The speakers that I've got lined up, I'll move to Councillor Powell next, then Councillor Swinglehurst, then Councillor Stark. I've got Councillor Cornthwaite and Councillor Robert Williams afterwards. Are there anybody else that wants to speak? Sorry, Councillor Kenyon, and then I've got a ruck. Okay, let's deal with what we've got at the moment. Councillor Powell first.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, my best wishes to Councillor Harvey. A couple of quick points. The additional funding allocated in 24-25 was considered sufficient to deliver services for children and young people directorate, and information to support this was provided to the 2 task and finish group sessions and to scrutiny management board. And to assure a couple of people who've mentioned it, monthly monitoring of savings targets against the profile plan already takes place and is reported to Cabinet. So Children's Services are committed to demonstrate significant improvement following the Ofsted inspection of a year and a half ago, and it remains this Council's and this administration's #1 priority. According to the Commissioner's report to the Secretary of State, the service had declined over a period of at least a decade. Of course, we would all have liked to have seen immediate improvement overnight, but understandably has taken time to stabilise the service and create the infrastructure for future improvement. The priority here is to further improve practice, as the leader has identified, and to improve the experience of children, young people and families who are supported and safeguarded by the service. From practice improvement and reduced demand will come financial efficiencies, I'm sure. Whilst I'm encouraged to see the amendment, we are seeing clear green shoots of improvement as observed by Ofsted and the Commissioner. And I believe that our budget proposal, including savings to be delivered in year, is achievable, and we can see that the direction of travel in the Directorate is already driving down demand and beginning to improve the quality of practice. Our 3-year strategy will support continuing improvement and ultimately deliver a service that is recognised as having improved when we are next inspected, and that it is both financially resilient and sustainable. It's a principle of the Children Act 1989 that children are best looked after within their families, and we have already seen a considerable reduction in the past year in the rate at which children come into our care, and we are now starting to see an increase in the numbers of children leaving our care. We've invested in our edge of care services and family group conferencing. We have a proud tradition and track record in Herefordshire of offering support to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, who now represent 10% of our overall children in care cohort. Recruitment of permanent staff remains a significant challenge, but our reputation as an ambitious employer of social workers is improving. With an increasingly permanent and stable workforce comes further practice improvement and reduction in the number of changes in social workers experienced by some families. We have set ourselves ambitious but realistic targets to convert social worker posts from agency to permanent, and also the Director and his team have already managed a considerable reduction in demand pressures on the service in this year, and we are seeing reductions in contacts, referrals and safeguarding inquiries. We are therefore confident that further improvement will be seen over the next year, consequence that savings will be identified, and therefore I cannot support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I've got Councillor Swindlehurst, then Councillor Stark and then Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to send my good wishes to Councillor Harvey. I completely understand the scepticism. There's a saying, blessed is he who expects nothing, for he shall not be disappointed. However, we do expect something, and more than that, we require it. It would not be fair on other directors to say, oh, you know, it's okay, don't worry about it. That's not appropriate. We have to have an expectation. There is a safety net already in place with I think 1.8 million or thereabouts in the new reserve. The base budget is going up, as Councillor Lester said, by some £15 million. And also, I find myself willing to defer to Councillor Powell's judgment and expertise, and I'm willing to take his word, because he's someone who has a really formidable track record and deep knowledge. I think progress is being made. So I have a higher degree of confidence than I've had previously. And so for those reasons, I'm not inclined to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this amendment because it's a financially prudent step. As members know around this table, for several years I've bemoaned the fact that the allocation to environment and economy has gone down in percentage terms, continually down every year. It now stands at about, I don't know what it is under the new budget, but it was around about 13.9%. It's barely above what we allocate to corporate services. And that's where a lot of our bread and butter services are. All this amendment is doing is mitigating the risk to environment and economy having to bear the impact of another year of disappointment if children's services doesn't deliver the savings. In fact, I'm quite astonished by the Conservatives just being so reckless in just dismissing this by saying that they are happy to sign up to another 2.5 million savings when there's no history of savings being achieved in this directorate. Now, I accept that people might be monitoring this and they may think that they are more confident than me in delivering them, but this actual amendment does provide some mitigation in terms of risks, and that risk is often to economy and environment, and I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon is next.
Thank you, Chair. Most of the points have been covered, but the way I look at things, if I've got £10 in my pocket, I'm going to spend £10. If I've got potential of £12 in my pocket, well, I'll spend all £12. This is coming from reserves. At the moment, if it stays where it is, it can be spent on anything this council needs to spend the money on. If it's ring-fenced for children's services, I mean, we're putting an awful lot of money in, continuing to put an awful lot of money in. I'm not Conservative, by the way. I'm an independent. That's how I describe myself, as nothing else. I want to give this budget a go. I want to believe in this administration, in this council working together to deliver these savings. Because it's not a political thing to kick around like a football. This is children in our county. And I believe that if we can achieve this, we can achieve more going forward. But to give more money into one particular directorate is the wrong thing to do. Leave it in reserves. Of course, you can use it if you need to use it. You can dip into it, that's fine. But other things can dip into this too. You talked about social housing and that sort of stuff. Well, if we find the savings there, potentially some of this from reserves could go into social housing. Let's not lock it up, ring fence it for one thing when we can use it for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. I've now got Councillor Corthwaite, Councillor Robert Williams, and then Councillor Price.
So I just wanted to say that I won't be supporting the amendment. As one of the councillors that works on 3 different scrutiny committees, what I'd like to see is that we were supporting the original as proposed by Councillor Stoddart. And I'd like to see now, which those of us who've been on scrutiny for the first time as newly elected councillors have been in post for about 8 to 9 months, and we've been learning how to scrutinise. And I think the original plan should be the one that we take forward, and the members of the scrutiny committees, as we go into this, we've now got something to get our teeth into, that we hold people to account. We hold cabinet to account, we hold directors to account, and we start to vocalise if we think that the targets are not being met. So with what has been proposed, let's go ahead with that and let the members of the various scrutiny committees scrutinise and keep everybody to account.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Robert Williams, then Councillor Price, Councillor Mason and Councillor Matthews, and then Councillor Hercombe. I'll then, if everyone else has had enough time, I'll then go to Councillor Hitchener, and then Councillor Stollard has the right of reply. All right? Does that seem sensible? Okay. Councillor Robert Williams.
Hi. So I want to be able to support Councillor Powell in his budget proposal, his element of the budget. It's about fairness, and everyone has to make efficiencies and sort of just work in a better way, which I believe is what we're doing. So it's unproportionately fair not to expect one directorate to do it. Let's not forget that overall they're still receiving more money. It's just about making them better at what they do rather than just throwing money at cash cow. Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. And should Councillor Harvey be listening in, I wish you well and hope you get better soon. However, I won't be able to support your amendment for a number of reasons. Firstly, the information, the financial data that you've used is now currently out of date because savings are being made across the Directorate, and I'm sure that Councillor Stoddart will make mention of it in due course again. The interesting thing about the budgets that we've got and why we've got to where we are is because of the challenge that we have made of the officers. We had the Star Chambers, of which I was participating in several outside of my own portfolio as well, and particularly in the children's services. And the Chief Executive and the Director know full well that we have put excessive challenge to them to say, you know, you've had a year, it hasn't been saved, we've got to make these savings. It is starting to come together, and we have solid input both through Councillor Powell and the officers that this is a deliverable budget going forward. This is exactly what Councillor James said. We are only moving this particular amendment money from left pocket to right pocket. It isn't going to make any difference to the budget. I can't support it because this budget is well thought out. So if you want a particular reference to it, we've made mention during the course of today several things about the rural services granted as funding, Lensman, drainage, rights of way. That has only come about in the last week, which has gone into this budget. In the last week, we have seen improvements to the children's budget coming down. So everything is, at this moment in time, going along to the plans that have been laid out. So the amendment is not necessary. Challenge is necessary, and we are doing that. So I'm sorry, but I can't support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Well, much of what I was going to say has been said by others, so I'm going to be very pithy, or at least try to be. I was listening to Councillor Stoddart earlier, and I was reminded of Gordon Brown, that sort of prudence with a purpose. There's a certain amount of what we're doing here that is really trying to make sure we have clarity in how to make sure we run that budget properly. And what really worries me, while this looks like a technical piece, and I have issues with technical pieces being brought at this stage because they do need a certain amount of scrutiny in order to be done around 50 people, accountability prospers in simplicity and it gets lost in complexity. The consequence of this proposal is likely to be increased difficulty in managing that budget by the Cabinet members responsible. And that, along with strategic progress, which again is often a casualty of complexity, has to be an ultimate goal here. So please, I urge you, let the Cabinet run their budget the way they've set it out to do so, and let the whole Council be accountable for that, rather than throwing in complexity, which takes us off course.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews and Councillor Hercombe, and then I'll wind it up.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got to remember, members, that there's a history for many, many years of this department being in financial problems. So it isn't something that's just developed over recent weeks or months. I myself will be voting against this amendment. I think that there are procedures in place like keeping children in a family environment. That's starting to work, and it's something that I've been on about. The Chief Executive is well aware that I'm constantly, and others, I'm constantly raising issues of value for money, and that's what I'll continue to do, and I'll be monitoring this situation very closely. But I think, and I'm confident, having spoken to the Cabinet member, that action is being taken, and therefore I'm confident the improvements will be made, and therefore I will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hercombe.
Thank you, Chair. I too would like to wish Councillor Harvey well, not least of all because she has in her possession a Bluffer's Guide to Latin, which I'm surprised to say might actually be useful at these council meetings. If I can stretch the... It's actually in a downstairs loo, I'm told, as well. There you go. If I could stretch the classical revival started by Councillor Oliver just a little further, this amendment appears to be akin to Nero fiddling while Rome burns. It does not change the substantive position, and neither does it move the transformation journey any further forward than the budget proposal put before us. While I applaud Councillor Harvey for her support and commitment to the transformational journey Children's Services is on, I believe, following assurances from the portfolio holder, that this is the wrong move, and I will not be supporting this amendment.
Thank you. I'll now call upon Councillor Hitchener, who is going to second the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I think this has been a very useful debate. There is a division between those who see the budget as prepared and achievable, and you really want to go for it. And there are those of us who say, "Hang on a minute, I think it's just not going to be achieved." Past history has kind of shown that. We've had, excuse me, Councillor Proctor mentioned earlier on about the budget being based on heroic assumptions. I think I'd rather we actually achieve things rather than we're particular heroes. and Councillor Stark has eloquently talked about the huge risks associated with this budget. The question is, in many ways, what some councillors have mentioned about will it actually make a difference to have this change, this amendment agreed? And I'd like to point out three possible areas. I think this council needs very much to have a culture of under-promising and over-delivering. It has consistently under-delivered and over-promised. And one reason I'm very supportive of this motion is it gives the officers a better chance to deliver. I think officers will be enormously encouraged to be able to say we achieved something, we did something, rather than being beaten about the heads towards the end of the year. So first of all, it'll enable a culture of under-promising and over-delivering. I think that should be encouraged. Secondly, I do think it's supportive of officers. It gives them just a little bit of flexibility to enable that, if things aren't going quite so well, then they can hold their heads up in a better way, saying, we are achieving things. And again, I think that's something which we should be engendering within officers. It's a way of achieving things. It's a culture within the council. And finally, what seems to happen in the past is that children have underperformed, and the money is then taken from other areas of the council, and that's so disheartening for those other departments. And I would like to think that this will make a change, because there's more of a ring fence of particular areas of the budget which will not be taken away. And that's the point at which you very eloquently made by Councillor Stark. So I do urge you to support this motion. I do think it will help with a cultural change within the council. It's not just technical, it actually will achieve something. It's deliberate, it's put in there to genuinely help the council achieve, and that is for the benefit of the whole council, and in particular I think of children's services. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on now Councillor Stoddard with his right to reply to the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, the description of the amendment, in the absence of any delivery or forecast delivery, is incorrect. As I've explained, in the Q3 report, which we presented to Cabinet next week, in 2 weeks' time, the Children's and Young People's Directorate are already showing savings of £0.3 million in normal running costs and £0.2 million saving in agency costs. In addition, we're already in the budget applying £1.835 million to a social care reserve. So that's addressed. So that's the first point. The second point I'd like to do is to address Councillor James' comment about demonstration of savings. I've just explained we are saving, and it's beginning to show that now. And on accountability, I can assure Council that I've actually requested that at the final Cabinet feeder meeting of every month, I will be holding each Cabinet portfolio member to account for their Directorate's savings plans. So we'll be doing it on a monthly basis, quite robustly. And thank you, my colleague to my right, Councillor Mason, for my analogy to Gordon Brown. I'll be like a terrier again to ensure that that is definitely being held. To pick up on Councillor Stark's comment about the economy and environment, we are investing in that, additional investment, and we'll continue to do that as we go through. And finally, the reduction in the overspend means from 13.8 down to 10.4, going down to 9.4, means that the amount drawn down from earmarked reserves to manage any overspend will be less, therefore preserving the Council's reserve balances for future use. So at all levels, we're there. And therefore, I cannot support this motion.
Thank you. Very well. We've now debated the amendment, and it has been proposed and seconded. And so this amendment will now be put to you. It will be a named vote. We will do it alphabetically. Just keying up Councillor Andrews. So I'll hand over to the monitoring officer. So if you're in favour of the amendment, you say for. If you're against, you say against or abstain. Very well. Everyone clear? Monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Andrews. For. Councillor Baker. Against. Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Bartram. Councillor Biggs. Councillor Bolter. Councillor Brammer. Councillor Carwardine. Councillor Chowns. Councillor Cole. Councillor Cornthwaite. Councillor Crockett. Councillor Dave Davis. Councillor Durkin. Councillor Dykes. Councillor Engel. Councillor Fagan. Councillor Foxton. Councillor Gandy. Councillor Gennard. Councillor Hamblin. Councillor Heathfield. Councillor Highfield. Councillor Hitchner.
For.
Councillor Hercombe. Councillor James. Councillor Kenyon. Councillor Lester. Councillor Mason. Councillor Matthews. Councillor O'Driscoll. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Owens. Councillor Pebbody. Councillor Phillips.
Abstain.
Councillor Dan Powell. Councillor Ivan Powell. Councillor Price. Councillor Proctor. Councillor Simmons. Councillor Spencer. Councillor Stark. Councillor Stoddard. Councillor Stone. Councillor Swinglehurst. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Tillett. Councillor Alan Williams. Councillor Robert Williams. Councillor Woodall. Yeah, 23, yeah, cool.
Very well. The amendment has been passed by 26 votes for, 23 against, with 1 abstention. Council, you have now passed an amendment to the budget recommended to Council, by the Cabinet to Council. I now need to ask the Leader of the Council if you accept the amended budget on behalf of the Cabinet, or if the meeting needs to be adjourned, both for today or to another date. So, Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Unless anybody wants a toilet break, I would say no, we won't have an adjournment, and I accept the amendment as the council's will, and so I think we should put forward the budget with that amendment.
Thank you. That means we can deal with this matter today. Very well. We will now move back then to this the amended substantive motion that was put before us before, and with that amendment that was been proposed, it is added to the recommendations that appear on pages 245 to 246. So are you very clear? So there's the 10 points that were around the original motion together with the amendment. Is everyone quite clear? Very well. We will now move to a recorded vote, and we will begin in alphabetical order. Thank you.
Again, for, against and abstain, please. Councillor Andrews. Councillor Baker. Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Bartram. Councillor Biggs. Councillor Bolter. Councillor Bramer. Councillor Carwardine. Councillor Chowns. Councillor Cole. Councillor Cornthwaite. Councillor Crockett. Councillor Dave Davis. Councillor Durkin. Councillor Dykes. Councillor Engel. Councillor Fagan. Councillor Foxton. Councillor Gandy. Councillor Gennard. Councillor Hamblin. Councillor Heathfield. Councillor Highfield. Councillor Hitchner.
For.
Councillor Hercombe. Councillor James. Councillor Kenyon. Councillor Lester. Councillor Mason. Councillor Matthews. Councillor O'Driscoll. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Owens. Councillor Pebbody. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Dan Powell. Councillor Ivan Powell. Councillor Price. Councillor Proctor. Councillor Simmons,
Abstain.
Councillor Spencer, Councillor Stark, Councillor Stoddart, Councillor Stone, Councillor Swinglehurst, Councillor Thomas, Councillor Tillett, Councillor Alan Williams, Councillor Robert Williams, Councillor Woodall.
We had
Three abstentions.
Three abstentions. Otherwise, three abstentions. Otherwise, everyone voted for. Is everyone quite clear? So the budget motion has been passed. Can I thank members for their contributions during that debate? It's one of our most important duties as elected members. And I think on your behalf, Council, I would like to express our thanks to the finance team of this council for the work that they have done in preparing this budget, our 1-5 officer, Mr Lovegrove, and also to the cabinet member as well. I think you'll all agree that it has been brought together with a great degree of transparency and detail for us all. And I'm sure we would be pleased if the 151 officer would pass our thanks back to the staff. Thank you. Very well. We will now move then to the final item on today's agenda, which is the pay policy statement. This is on pages 343 to 358. This is to approve the policy statement for publication. This, of course, is an annual directive, a legal directive that all public authorities like ourselves have to do. And I will invite the chairperson of the employment panel, Councillor Lester, to present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be very brief. The Council is required to agree and publish a pay policy statement annually. The Employment Panel have considered the pay policy statement enclosed, and the panel recommends to full Council that you approve the statement. This document is a statement of what is already in place. It does not in itself change how we pay our employees. No one will get a pay increase as a result of agreeing this statement. There are no significant changes to the pay policy statement since it was approved by Council last year. So as it needs to be done as a matter of formality, I would ask this Council, seeing as it's gone to the Employment Panel, to so approve. Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask the Vice Chairperson of the Employment Panel, Councillor Chowns, to second.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Lester has pointed out, this is a statutory requirement and simply a statement. I would just draw two matters to colleagues' attention. First of all, as highlighted in paragraph 7 of the report, I personally very much welcome the fact that the gap is closing between the lowest and the highest paid employees in the council. There is still, further to go in this regard, but it shows that pay is moving slowly in the direction of greater equality, which is something to be welcomed. And the second is that I would like to put on record my disappointment at the persistence of the gender pay gap. I note, as set out in the report, that it is much lower in some other authorities, for example, neighbouring Gloucestershire. And just to note for colleagues that I have asked at Employment Panel for more action to address this and for more information to be shared on what the Council is doing to address the persistent gender pay gap. I recommend the statement to be adopted. Thank you.
Very well. This is pretty straightforward. I don't presume anybody wants to speak to this. Very well. I will take an armed vote on this. So if you just put up your hands if you're in favour. That strikes me as unanimous. Anybody against? No. Any abstentions? No. Therefore, that is passed. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, can I thank members of the public for their attendance today? And in conclusion, can I remind everyone that the next meeting of Council will take place on Friday, the 8th of March. This meeting is now closed. Can we switch off the light?